Bill Sheridan from the Maryland Association of CPAs is here to talk with us a little bit about use of avatars in training both students and professionals. And bear in mind, this isn't a move, it's real life. Bill?
Okay, thank you for having me here. I'm going to try to breeze through this as quickly as possible. I don't want to hold you up from lunch too much, but this is cool stuff, and I just love talking about it. So we're going to talk a little bit about avatars, about virtual worlds, and their implications for education going forward. Because as Billy said, this stuff is real, okay, and it's happening now. How many of you saw the movie Avatar? The narrator says, you know, you're not in Kansas anymore, you are on Pandora, which is this futuristic world where avatars kind of rule the day. And this isn't Pandora, but it's not science fiction either, as Billy said. It's real, it's happening now. There are people using virtual worlds and avatars very effectively right now to educate students, to educate their members, and just move education kind of forward right along with technology. So this stuff is, it's actually happening, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to skip through this slide and kind of ask you, can anyone tell me what that is? That's a classroom, right? Desks in a room, a desk up front where the teacher sits, got some tablets on the desk. Yeah, that's a typical traditional look at a classroom. How about that? Same type of thing, right? A little bit more updated, but a classroom nonetheless. How about that? Or that? Or maybe that. I keep hearing classroom, and you know what? In my opinion, you're absolutely right. These things are all examples of classrooms. They're all learning environments. They're all great examples of what Tony Bingham and Marsha Connor will call the new social learning, okay? And they've written a book by that name. Basically, what they will tell you is that almost everything that we learn on a day-to-day basis, we learn from each other. We don't learn it in a classroom. We don't learn it sitting in desks in a room, listening to some guy drone on and on at the front of the room. We learn it by, you know, hey, how do you do this? And you show me how to do it, and there not only have we figured out how to do it, but I've learned how to do it myself. That's where most learning takes place on a day-to-day basis. And it's what really, to me, what makes the whole concept of social media so intriguing. Here we've got tools that allow us to kind of communicate and collaborate exponentially with our friends. And now we're able to use those tools to learn almost at that same exponential rate. Pretty intriguing concept. And yet when you think about education, I think a lot of people, you know, go back to that picture of desks in a classroom, right? That's kind of what comes to mind when you think about a classroom or education. And there's a whole new generation of young folks who are about ready to turn that notion of education on its ear. And we're going to talk a little bit about them right now. This is a gentleman by the name of Klaus Nemzau. I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He is CEO of something called the 3D Avatar School in Hong Kong. And according to his research, in 2009, there were 400 million people worldwide using virtual worlds, virtual games, these online 3D role-playing environments, 400 million people worldwide. Less than 2 years later, in 2011, that number had increased to 1 billion people worldwide. That, by the way, if you do the math, it's somewhere around 1 million people a day participating in these, additional people a day participating in these virtual worlds. According to Klaus, 75% of them are between the ages of 10 and 25. And most of those folks are between the ages of 10 and 15. Okay, so we're talking about very young people kind of engaged in these virtual worlds. But what does that mean for us? Before I get to that, I want to ask, you know, what are these folks doing in these areas? And typically, you know, they're vegging on the couch, you know, playing games, just kind of ignoring mom and dad, escaping reality. But you know what? They're also learning. A lot of these games incorporate the notions of problem solving, of strategic thinking and collaboration. What we were finding out, though, was that it ended up being, for us anyway, less about networking and more about a way of offering education to our members. This was an area where we could kind of gather CPAs from throughout Maryland and actually from throughout the country and give them access to thought leaders that they might not ever be able to hear in a physical classroom. And to do it all on the cheap in this virtual world of Second Life. So that's what we started actually doing. We started certifying some of our CPE programs to be presented in Second Life, in this virtual space. So we would have a presenter presenting from his or her home, CPAs signing into Second Life from wherever they are, and it had the look and feel of a classroom, so the attendees sitting in a classroom, a presenter up front, slides behind it, you could see a PowerPoint presentation, et cetera. And a couple of really great, powerful examples of the way it was used. I'll give you a couple of them. 2009, the AICPA Tech Plus conference that was held in Las Vegas. Okay, let me set the scene for you. It's a live event. A bunch of folks sitting in a room like this, speaker in the front, a big screen in the back, but instead of seeing a PowerPoint presentation, what they were seeing was a live video shot of our virtual world in Second Life. And in that virtual world, we had a whole bunch of avatars that had gathered representing CPAs from throughout the country, okay? And they were talking to the folks live in Las Vegas. So it was kind of a little bit of interaction there. It's what we call mixed reality. Live event, kind of commingling with a virtual event. It looked a little bit like
Folks,
this. This is what the virtual space actually looked like.
And Linden Lab.
So imagine you're in Las Vegas, you're sitting here at the Tech
Rosedale,
Plus conference, and this is what you're
Coming in
seeing.
is
You can
Philip
hear them
Linden
talking.
to address you all in all three of these areas. So welcome, Philip.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So
Yeah,
this
come on up
goes
to the-
on for a few minutes, but that just gives you a little bit of taste of what was going on at the Tech Plus conference. We did something very similar at the 2009 XBRL International Conference, which was actually held in Paris, and we kind of turned the tables on that one. We gathered CPAs from throughout Maryland and the country on CPA Island. That's what we call our space in Second Life. And let them listen in on what was going on in the room in Paris as speakers in Paris were presenting about XBRL there. So it was a way for our members to attend an international conference in France without having to get on a plane and fly to France. So it was kind of cool. This is our multimedia people got a little creative with that one. But so that's a little video from that. But in the interest of time, I'll move along. So in addition to those two kind of big stage events, we've held many, many smaller CPE programs, typically short ones, an hour, 2 hours long, for our members in this virtual space, all qualifying for CPE, and actually all of them, most of them actually, receiving very strong reviews from the folks who attended. And the interesting thing to me was if you read the reviews, they deal less with the format. They're not talking about Second Life at all. They're talking about the content, the material that they're receiving, and liking it very much. So that to us was a big home run, right? We were able to present material to them in this new format, and they're still getting quality and value out of that material, and not getting hung up so much on the way it's presented, but what they're being presented. So that was a big home run for us, knowing that our members were actually finding value in what we were presenting. And we're not the only ones there. There's a bunch of other ones from throughout the accounting world, accounting education world, actually. North Carolina State is in Second Life with Ernst & Young. They've created a virtual campus that's dedicated to accounting education. A bunch of folks from Australia are doing some really cool stuff. Stephen Rowe, he's a professor from Southern Cross University, has teamed up with a fellow professor and some American professors as well to create what they call Commerce Town in Second Life. It's an actual town with, it's got an accounting firm and a bank and a winery and all kinds of retail areas there, but you can actually go there virtually, visit this town, and kind of discuss the accounting issues that might come up along the way as you're talking about business being conducted in Main Street, USA. Kind of a cool a way of using it. FASB is there, the IRS is there. Actually, I'm going to go back here for a second. A very interesting use of it, I think, is from a professor at Suffolk University. His name is Michael Creighton. Dr. Creighton, a few years ago, found the Ben & Jerry's ice cream. They have a virtual version of their headquarters there in Second Life. And so what he decided to do is he was going to take his accounting students on a virtual tour of Ben & Jerry's and see, the process of converting like raw goods into finished product, and talk about the accounting issues that come up along the way. So the whole thing about what everyone is doing in here is it just adds another level of engagement to the education process, right? Instead of just sitting there and reading from a book and memorizing things by rote, you actually get to see what's going on. You actually get to see the concepts in front of you in a 3D environment. Makes it a little bit more robust, a little bit more engaging and fun, I mean, God forbid, education should be fun, right? So a lot of people doing some pretty cool stuff there. I'm going to skip through this one and move on to sort of a conclusion here. The benefits of virtual education, just in the interest of time. And all these examples that I've given you, everyone kind of points to typically the same benefits that they're getting them. And I've boiled them down to these 5, okay? One is the death of distance. We get to learn now anywhere, at any time, from anyone, okay? We don't have to wait and go to a physical classroom. We can do it pretty much at our leisure. World-class instruction. We get to be exposed to world-class thought leaders. That's something that's typically impractical in a physical classroom, suddenly much easier to accomplish virtually. Preparing for the worst. This is kind of a cool idea here. I've talked with a number of people who use Second Life and other virtual worlds as kind of, risk management type of playgrounds where they can create problems virtually and discuss how to address those problems before they ever actually have to deal with them in the real world, right? So it's kind of like worst case scenario practice. You get to create the problems that you think you might have to deal with sometime, learn how to deal with them, and then if they actually come up in the real world, you're a little bit better prepared to do it. Engagement. I've talked with a number of folks who point to this as a big benefit. Students who are typically shy or unwilling to participate in the physical classroom, they're much more willing to do so virtually. They found that time and time again, their participation in the class increases dramatically when they put them in a virtual setting. And it really kind of increases the discussion that's going on within the classroom, makes it a much more robust experience. And collaboration, the idea of students in many locations kind of just working and learning together. All that stuff might seem really kind of cutting edge education-wise, and it is. It's still kind of young, and people are still kind of feeling out what works and what doesn't. But if you really want to get cutting edge, you need to talk about Jane McGonigal. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Jane. She's a PhD. She's also a world-renowned designer of some of these 3D online role-playing games. So she actually designs some of these games. And she has a really big idea. She wants to take these games and the people who play them and use them to solve really big real-world issues. And so you ask, okay, how is she going to do that? Well, she starts by trying to grasp and try to understand what gamers are really good at. And she boils it down to 4 things. Number 1, they have a sense of urgent optimism. Right? They want to act now to overcome obstacles, and they believe that they will be successful. That's number 1. Number 2 is they weave a very tight social fabric. In other words, according to Jane, they like people better when they play a game with them. Okay? And that's, I think, just human nature. These games kind of build trust and collaboration and they build bonds because, you're actually collaborating and working to solve problems with other people. So you like them better when you play a game with them. It's pretty much that simple. Number 3, something that Jane calls blissful productivity. They're happier working really, really hard at the game than they are when they're just kind of relaxing and hanging out and doing nothing. They would rather work really hard and be successful at their games than to not do anything at all. Blissful productivity. And the 4th thing is something that she calls epic meaning. It's kind of the superhero syndrome. They think that they can save the world, right? There's an epic problem that they have to solve, and they think they're the ones to do it. So those 4 things that gamers are really good at. Now, the problem that Jane readily admits is that they are very good at these things in the game, okay? In real world, not so much, right? They're kind of using the game to escape real world problems. So the issue that Jane is coming across now is, okay, how do you take that level of virtual engagement and apply it to these real world issues? And she has found a way to do that. And your mind is going to blow right off your shoulders when you hear her answer. She says, we got to spend more time playing games. Right now, she says, we're spending a cumulative total of 3 billion hours a week playing in these virtual spaces, these virtual kind of online role-playing games. She wants to increase that to 21 billion hours. Now, you think people are wasting time now, then try increasing it 7-fold, right? 7-fold. The deal here is they can't just be playing any games, okay? They have to be playing the right games. And that's where Jane and her crew come in. They want to design the right games to engage these folks to help solve some really big real-world issues. And if you bear with me, I'm gonna play. She describes it much better than I do. I want you to hear Jane herself talk about it.
So that's where I get my 21 billion hours a week of gameplay from. Let's get half of us to agree to spend an hour a day playing games until we solve real-world problems. Now, I know you're asking, how are we going to solve real-world problems in games? Well, that's what I have devoted my work to over the past few years at the Institute for the Future. We have this banner in our offices in Palo Alto, and it expresses our view of how we should try to relate to the future. We do not want to try to predict the future. What we want to do is make the future. We want to imagine the best case scenario outcome, and then we want to empower people to make that outcome a reality. We want to imagine epic wins, and then give people the means to achieve the epic win. I'm just going to very briefly show you 3 games that I've made that are an attempt to give people the means to create epic wins in their own futures. So this is World Without Oil. We made this game in 2007. This is an online game in which you try to survive an oil shortage. The oil shortage is fictional, but we put enough online content out there for you to believe that it's real and to live your real life as if we've run out of oil. So when you come to the game, you sign up, you tell us where you live, and then we give you real-time news videos, data feeds that show you exactly how much oil costs, what's not available, how food supply is being affected, how transportation is being affected, if schools are closed, if there's rioting. And you have to figure out how you would live your real life as if this were true. And then we ask you to blog about it, to post videos, to post photos. We piloted this game with 1,700 players in 2007, and we've tracked them for the 3 years since. And I can tell you that this is a transformative experience. Nobody wants to change how they live just because it's good for the world or because we're supposed to. But if you immerse them in an epic adventure and tell them, we've run out of oil, this is an amazing story and adventure for you to go on. Challenge yourself to see how you would survive. Most of our players have kept up the habits that they learned in this game. So for the next world-saving game, we decided to aim higher, bigger problem than just peak oil. We did a game called Superstruct at the Institute for the Future. And the premise was a supercomputer has calculated that humans have only 23 years left on the planet. The supercomputer was called the Global Extinction Awareness System, of course. And we asked people to come online, almost like a Jerry Bruckheimer movie. You know Jerry Bruckheimer movies? You form a dream team, you've got the astronaut, the scientist, the ex-convict, and they all have something to do to save the world. But in our game, instead of just having 5 people on the dream team, we said everybody's on the dream team, and it's your job to invent the future of energy, the future of food, the future of health, the future of security, and the future of the social safety net. We had 8,000 people play that game for 8 weeks. They came up with 500 insanely creative solutions that you can go online if you Google Superstruct and see. So finally, the last game, we're launching it March 3rd. This is a game done with the World Bank Institute. If you complete the game, you will be certified by the World Bank Institute as a social innovator, class of 2010, working with universities all over sub-Saharan Africa, and we are inviting them to learn social innovation skills. We've got a graphic novel, we've got leveling up in skills like local insight, knowledge networking, sustainability, vision, and resourcefulness. I would like to invite all of you to please share this game with young people anywhere in the world, particularly in developing areas, who might benefit from coming together to try to start to imagine their own social enterprises to save the world. So I'm going to wrap up now. I want to ask a question. What do you think happens next? We've got all these amazing gamers. We've got these games that are kind of pilots of what we might do, but none of them have saved the real world yet. Well, I hope that you will agree with me that gamers are a human resource that we can use to do real world work, that games are a powerful platform for change. We have all these amazing superpowers, blissful productivity, the ability to weave a tight social fabric, this feeling of urgent optimism and the desire for epic meaning. I really hope that we can come together to play games that matter, to survive on this planet for another century. And that's my hope, that you will join me in making and playing games like this. When I look forward to the next decade, I know 2 things for sure: that we can make any future we can imagine, and we can play any games we want. So I say, let the world-changing games begin. Thank you.
So, I mean, if you take away nothing from that, take away her attitude. I just love that attitude, right? So many people, as I said before, look at gamers as just, wasting their lives sitting there on the couch doing nothing. And she looks at them and says, man, what a human resource that is. Look at all those folks, and if we could figure out how to harness that and turn it into something good, we could really do a lot of good things. So, I mean, that's the kind of thinking that's going to solve some really big issues going forward, I think. And whether or not she succeeds here, I don't know. But I just love the way that she thinks and is moving in that direction. So I just thought that was worth sharing. I'm going to wrap up now because I know you guys are waiting to get to lunch. Just a quick final word. And it comes from David Sivit from the Grove Consultants International. He says, and I quote, "If the web is reshaping the world as we know it, and will be the water in which the new generation of digital natives will swim, then it behooves all of us to understand its implications." And this certainly falls in that realm, I think. I really believe that virtual worlds unquestionably have implications for what we're going to be doing going forward, particularly in education. And so I think it's important that we start paying attention to it. And I think it's great that you're here taking that step. And don't get caught up in the platforms. We've talked about Second Life here quite a bit today. Second Life might be where it's at. It might not be. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of issues with Second Life in addition to all the good stuff that it does. So whether or not that's going to be where we go virtually going forward, I don't know. It's not so much the platform, but it's the concept you got to pay attention to. This idea of just working and collaborating virtually, I really believe it's not going to go away. And I think that we can harness it and really do some cool things going forward. So that's that. I left some slides for questions. I'm not going to take any right now, but I did in these slides a couple things to point out. First of all, you can download them at your leisure at slideshare.net/Bill Sheridan. And within these slides, the very last slide has all my contact information. If you have any questions at all or you just want to chat about this, please feel free. Email me or contact me on Twitter or Facebook and say, I saw you at the NASBA conference. I have a couple questions. I'd love to know more about it. I love to talk about this stuff, and I will all day. Please contact me if you have any questions. And with that, just enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.